evening and welcome to the regular Rosemount City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First of all, are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No, sir.
So with no changes, would anyone like to move a motion to approve the
So
agenda?
move the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion, Councilmember Weisensell, second, Councilmember Fresky, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted. We do not have any presentations this evening, so we'll move on to public comments. Anyone wishing to address the council or make a statement at this time may do so. And Aaron, do you see anyone?
Yes, we do have a few folks online. So if you are looking to participate, you can submit a chat or raise your hand, and I'll call you in the order that I see you.
So you're not seeing any hands, so with no public comments, we'll move on to the consent agenda. First of all, anyone wishing to pull any items, council members? Councilmember Block?
I'd like to pull item E, appointing 2020 class of firefighters.
Okay. Councilmember Essler?
I'd like to pull F.
Anyone else? So with items E and F pulled, would anyone like to make a motion on the consent agenda? Go ahead, Councilmember Weisensell.
I'll move the consent agenda A through P with items 6E and 6F removed for further consideration.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor, Councilmember Weisensell, second, Councilmember Essler. Any further discussion? And with that, please take the roll.
Weisensell,
Aye.
Block,
Aye.
Trusty,
Aye.
Essler,
Aye.
Fresky.
Motion carries 5-0, and that concludes all items except for E and F. So we'll move to item E, which is appoint the 2020 class of firefighters. I'll turn this over to Councilmember Block.
I pulled this item just because normally we do live. We have our new firefighters come in and we're able to recognize them. And I just wanted to publicly recognize them even though we are not able to do it in person. So our new firefighters for this year, and Mr. Martin, let me know if I pronounce anybody's name incorrectly, are Nicholas Schwen, Luke Severson, Justin Hyman, Kimberly Lawrence, Lawrence McHale, and Andrew Larson. So I want to thank them for their service and welcome them on board.
Likewise. So would you like to move a motion?
I will, Mayor. I will make a motion approving the hiring of 6 new firefighters effective January 5th, 2021.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor, Councilmember Block, second, Councilmember Essler. Any comments? Only thing I'll add on, once we're allowed to meet in person here, we'll have new firefighters and police officers and Eagle Scouts will probably have a full room depending on when that date is. So with that, please take the roll.
Block,
Aye.
Droste,
Aye.
Essler,
Aye.
Fresky,
Aye.
Weisenthal,
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, and that concludes item 6E. So we'll now move on to 6F, which is charitable gambling premise permit for Irish football boosters. And with that, I'll turn this over to Councilmember Essler.
Yeah, so, City Administrator Logan and I had a conversation today, and my understanding is that the state statute in regards to the gambling operations, we have to live up, we have to abide by the state statute. So it appears that you have two choices, and that is that it's either there's no trade area, or we operate with a trade area that has to, at a minimum, include all of the contiguous cities that abut up to Rosemount. But that isn't the reason I pulled it. The reason I wanted to pull this, I think it's really important that staff takes note on what the requirement is on the 80%. And I do think we've got to put a little bit more discipline in place with all of the current gambling operators. Unless I'm missing somebody here, it's the Irish football boosters, it's RAAA, it's Raha. I think those are the only three organizations, Aaron or Logan, if I'm missing somebody. But regardless, I think it's really important that we communicate to all of the gambling operators that for 2021, we will be looking, for some, it sounds like maybe some improved reporting to show that indeed that they're spending their 80% in the trade area. I have a little concern about the existing operators, because I think most of their funds are expended towards the Rosemount community, the high school area, in the three operators that we have. But I just think it's really important that we get a discipline in place for all of the gambling operators, that they're reporting that on a monthly basis. I know the state reporting that they report shows what the earnings are, but I do think it's really important that they're able to show that the 80% was spent, which is in compliance with the ordinance. I think that's really important. So I would just ask staff to make sure they communicate that to all the gambling operators.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, would you like to move a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt the draft resolution approving the charitable gambling premise permit for Irish football boosters at the Clover located at 14845 South Robert Trail.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor, Councilmember Essler, and a second, Councilmember Block. Any further comments? And seeing none, please take the roll.
Droste,
Aye.
Essler,
Aye.
Fresky, Weisenthal,
Aye.
Block,
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, and that concludes item 6F and all items under the consent agenda. So we'll move on to public hearings. We have one scheduled this evening. It is a public hearing for a request by CNC Development for the vacation of a drainage and utility easement over Outlot B, Emerald Isle, First Edition. So with that, we'll begin this item. I'll turn it over to staff, Ms. Lindquist. For process, this is a public hearing. Once we have an overview from staff and various questions from council, we'll open it up to the developer or anyone on representing CNC Development, and then we'll open it up to the public if anyone would like to speak at this hearing. So with that, I'll now turn over to Ms. Lindquist.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm gonna share my screen, which I'm really excited about doing and hopefully doing it correctly.
Did we lose her?
You had it there for a moment, Kim. Are you gone? She's gone. Okay.
He had it up there too.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, she's now no longer on.
We will just take a couple minutes here. Erin went down the hall to ask her to reconnect.
Chance for free Packers mug promo again. You had that going before the meeting, so there you go.
Okay. Let me,
Gotta turn it the right way. There we go.
There you go.
Get it off the screen.
All right, you're back, yep, looks good, Kim. It's working so far.
okay, I apologize. I came in as not a participant and then everything went away. So anyhow, so tonight we've got two items on the agenda, the public hearing for the vacation, and then we have a final plat later under the new business. So they're really intrinsically tied because this is the second phase of the project of final plat. And so there are vacations that are needed for existing easements. So there was a chronology that was provided in your packet. The council approved the entire project in February of 2020. And this is the location map of the entire site. Here's the first phase, and then the area for the vacation is outlined in red. And that was Outlot B that had a blanket easement over the entire area. And that was dedicated with the first edition. And that was approved by the council in August, or excuse me, by the Planning Commission in August, approved in September of 2020 by the council, and then was recorded at the county recorder. So the situation right now is, if you look at the preliminary plat in front of you, the blue area is the area that the developer is now proposing to plat. And as you can see, that is within the area of the blanket drainage and utility easement. And so they're asking for a vacation of that easement, and then they will rededicate easements in appropriate locations. The issue for the city tonight is that there's ponding area, particularly in this very southern corner, that the city would like to maintain that drainage and utility easement for both local and regional ponding associated with this project, and also the project at Akron Avenue. And so here is the area where the sketches for the vacation, and then this is the area that shows the ponding. So the developer had proposed a ponding roughly in this area, the green. It hasn't been appropriately sized yet because all of the project hasn't been submitted for final approval. The area in this blue is the area that the county is looking for with the drainage and utility easement for a regional pond. And ultimately, it is our belief that this entire area will be used for ponding associated with the project, as well as some regional benefit for both ponding and infiltration. So because there is this discussion about whether the developer should be allowing the easement for the regional ponding that would come a bit before the local pond creation, the city attorney's been involved, and here are the conditions that we're recommending for approval in this vacation. I would say typically, we vacate and get new easements. However, in this particular instance, it doesn't make a lot of sense to vacate a portion of the site from an easement that we currently want. And so these two conditions address maintaining a portion of the existing drainage and utility easement that will benefit the ponding area on site. So that's kind of the background and the location issues. I've asked City Attorney Mary Teachin to also talk about some of the issues that she's raised in her memorandum to the council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's good to see all of you again. It's been a while. So I wanted to just kind of quickly go over some of the issues that have been raised as part of this entire process over the last several months. There have been some, as you know, some correspondence from the developer and from their attorney relating to this process. And as Ms. Lindquist has already kind of described, the blanket easement over Outlot B was dedicated as part of the approval of the first plat that was approved for the first edition. So that was already approved by the city and was also filed with the county prior to the developer or their legal counsel making any objection to the blanket easement. So up until that point, the objection wasn't received until after the plat was even filed. And so given that, I don't know, the timing seemed a bit curious to us, only because it appeared to be more directly connected to the county's later offer to compensate the developer rather than tied to any real specific objection based on the legal merits of the city's condition that the easement be dedicated in the first place. But nevertheless, staff did agree to come back to the council and recommend that the blanket easement be vacated. And of course, that's the item that's on the agenda tonight before you, with the exception of the areas that are needed for ponding. And so the proposed area to be vacated, we believe, addresses the developer's concern and their attorney's concern about there being a cloud on title, which was really the main issue that was raised, at least initially, by the developer's attorney back in September when he sent the letter. So we believe that vacating that area would address that issue. So dedication of drainage and utility easements are very common during the platting process and are authorized by state law. So and in addition, the proposed use of the dedicated easements or easement is consistent with uses allowed within a drainage and utility easement. And further, this area is completely consumed and is within the approved master development plan area, all of which will be used for development, and within which areas have actually already been, to my understanding, and Kim can, Ms. Lindquist can correct me if I'm wrong, and within which areas have already been identified and designated for necessary ponding and infiltration basin connected to development, as well as the Trunks storm sewer extension, which you saw mentioned in your packet, which was requested by the developer. So all of those uses are within the approved development area, which was approved, I believe, back in May, correct?
Yes.
So in my opinion, you know, I believe that the city has legal authority to require dedication of these easements through this process. And, you know, I understand and I certainly respect the developer's attorney and his opinion as well, but, you know, and I'm happy to try to address more specific questions if they come up, but that's just my initial kind of take on things here and sort of a summary of what we've discussed, what staff and I have discussed over the last several months.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll open up council if you have any questions of staff or city attorney. Just for process, if I may, and either one of you can answer it. So when the developer goes to phase 3, we will again remove the easement across that area as it's developed, or phase 4, whatever's when it moves forward, correct?
Mayor, that's correct. In this particular instance, the developer is now proposing a huge blanket easement. We've seen this a lot in some of our other developers where they do that, primarily so, you know, when they're putting in infrastructure grading, that they don't have to be so particular about where the end of that grading or road is, because you give them the blanket easement. So we certainly aren't requiring them to do that, but we would be looking, you know, for some additional dedication at that final phase. That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I think at this time, if we have anyone online on the developer side, if you would like to make any additional comments before we open it up to the public. Kim, do you know if we were having representatives?
Yep,
or-
I think we've got them on, so Aaron can give them the rights here in a moment.
Mr. Mayor, can you see me okay?
I can, sir. Welcome.
Well, that's probably unfortunate. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
You're
and
equally
staff.
welcome.
My name's Peter Coyle. I'm a lawyer representing the developer, the applicant here this evening. My address for the record is 8300 Norman Center Drive, Bloomington, Minnesota. I appreciate the chance to visit with you this evening, and I'll be brief out of respect for your time. I need to start at the beginning because there's a little bit of factual revisionism going on here that I need to try to be clear about with the council. I'm not going to restate the points I raised in my letters. I'm sure the staff and the council have had a chance to review those. But let's start at the beginning, which was when the master plan was approved back in early 2020. There was an area of the property that the city wanted to see designated for potential multifamily. And that's the area that has become the focus of this easement discussion as we move forward. What's critical about that, because it's central to this notion that the city has a right to pursue an easement in that area today, is that that's an outlot. It was an outlot when that first phase was approved. It's going to be an outlot assuming the second phase is approved tonight. And what that means is the developer has no rights with respect to the use of that property. By the city's own statements, including in the record of the various documents approved, those approvals are concept only. The developer has to go through a subsequent process, not only to plat the property, but also to get a site plan approved. What the city has done effectively is encumbered the property prematurely ahead of the developer's submission of any kind of a plan, what it would be the developer proposing it or a potential third-party buyer proposing it. But nonetheless, we are now bound by this easement, and we have to work around the easement as it's been defined by the city. So that's point one. Point two, when it was apparent that the developer was going to try to acquire the property from the underlying owner, the county was then in discussion with the landowner, which ultimately then included Mr. Ryan and CNC. And this was in the April, May, June timeframe. And it was very clear that the county intended to acquire an easement to pay for it. In fact, they submitted a letter on approximately June 15 offering to purchase the exact easement we're talking about for $55,000, and that letter is available to you, I'm sure. That was acceptable to the developer because they thought they would be compensated, although they had initiated an appraisal thinking that the valuation might not be correct, but nonetheless they proceeded. After the property owner closed, after the buyer closed, and in conjunction with submitting their first phase plat, staff took the position that a drainage and utility easement had to be imposed over what we are calling Outlot B. We objected for the very reason that we are here tonight. The staff stated that it was city policy to impose these drainage and utility easements over outlots to avoid confusion. Well, the only thing it accomplished is it gave the county an excuse to withdraw their written offer to purchase the easement, and instead, now, as we are hearing from staff, it sets the county and the city up to convey an easement at no cost to the damage of the landowner, not just financially, but now their property is formally encumbered by a restriction on how they can use the property in the future, whether they choose to develop it themselves or whether they choose to sell it. So it's factually incorrect that this is something that the landowner was acquiescing to. The only way they could proceed with their first phase application was at the insistence of staff that they provide this easement, which was, quote, per policy. There was no discussion at that time that it would become the basis for the county's revocation of their offer, and now the position of the city and the county that they get the easement for free. So now we come full circle, we're on phase two. The developer has requested that that drainage utility easement be rescinded. And now we're being told that, yes, you'll need ponding for your future development on Outlot B. And, oh, by the way, this will accomplish regional ponding objectives for the city and for the county, which frankly, they ought to be paying for. We still do not have an application pending before the city to develop anything on Outlot B, notwithstanding what the master development plan might conceptually identify. And so from my own experience, Mr. Mayor and Council, having done this work for near 30 years, I've never ever seen a city insist on obtaining an easement of this type over an outlot when the developer has no specific plans presented for its use. Instead, what I would say the record pretty clearly shows is that the city, and I guess in cooperation with the county, manipulated the platting process, and that's my word, and I say that respectfully, manipulated the platting process to convey a financial benefit to the county and to the loss of the landowner. Had he known this in advance, he would have negotiated with his underlying seller for some kind of a price offset reflecting the value of this land that's now subject to the easement. But they had no idea that that was going to be coming on the part of the city. And so this evening, we are saying very respectfully that this is wrong. The city should act on the revocation of the existing drainage and utility easement. And we respectfully urge you not to adopt the substitute easement that's been proposed by your staff. It's notable, and I say this respectfully to your city attorney, who's very capable, in looking at her memo that's part of your packet. There's no citation to a city code provision, and there's no citation to a statutory provision that expressly authorizes taking an easement from a landowner when there's no specific development application pending for the affected property. And in my opinion, that constitutes a taking. So I just want to be clear about that. The landowner feels like he's been taken advantage of improperly, And so our request this evening is that that decision of the city dating back to the early part of this project at phase one be undone, and that the landowner be left to deal with its outlot and possibly a future ponding requirement whenever that outlot B is brought forward for development. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. I know I've kind of dumped a lot on you and the council, and I apologize for that. I hope it was intelligible to you. I do have the project architect online with me as well, Rick Osberg. Rick, if there's anything further you think you need to add, please do so at this time.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council.
Welcome.
Thank you. Maybe we just add one point of clarification that I had while I was in the process of designing the subdivision, working with the city. I often refer to city documents for assistance in guiding and planning the site. And one of those was the stormwater management plan for the city of Rosemount. And became somewhat familiar with how the drainage master plan worked here. And there is several areas within the city, multitudes of areas in the city identified for regional ponding. I carefully looked at that to see that if regional ponding was identified within, at that time known as the Courtauld property, it did not appear so. It appeared to be located, the nearest basin downstream of us would have been to the east on the Bester property. And while there's references that have been made to regional ponding in the southern portion of the Courtauld site, it hasn't been depicted on the stormwater management plan in that way. Had I noticed that in the beginning of our design at the initial stages of preliminary plat, I could have identified that to our developer, who in turn would have potentially saw that as an encumbrance in the future that might happen, so that maybe that land wouldn't be quite as valuable to take that into account. So we did plan for that drainage probably would end up going that way. That's where it naturally flows, not necessarily anticipating that water runoff other than from our own site would be impounded there due to the diagramming from the city master plan that showed it continuing on to the east. So I was involved with the whole process of design and got involved with meeting with the appraiser on site and the landowner or the seller. Quite familiar, and we were just a little bit taken aback at the point in time when the county withdrew the offer for the purchase because they had gotten their easement. And so if you have any questions on me, I'll be free to help you out. Thanks.
Thank you. I think at this time I'll open up council. If you have any questions of the architect or the applicant's attorney. I guess if nobody has questions, I do have questions for Kim. Is it true on our stormwater master plan, we did not show it on this property, and it was on the Bester property, which is actually a little lower, if I'm not mistaken, topography-wise?
Okay, I'm gonna try to do this again. Yeah, this is the plan that Rick sent over. So this is the site, and it doesn't show a regional pond. The regional pond is associated with improvements that are occurring in the immediate area related to transportation. So it isn't, although it does, as you can see from the other drawing, the area overlaps the proposed local pond.
Mr. Mayor, can I comment?
Yes.
I think that doesn't respond to your question respectfully. The city's mapping documents are binding on landowners once they're adopted, and all engineers pay attention to those documents. The specific placement of the regional pond that Mr. Osberg referenced is clearly visible to the east off of the property that's before you this evening. I just want to make sure that that's understood.
And Mayor, I might add that these are drawings that the regional ponds definitely do move depending on how things go. So it's not, we definitely had some that are in the general vicinity, but not necessarily exactly in the same location as the map. I think the one thing I just want to make sure that the council is aware is that this property is part of a master development plan that includes both that southern piece, and it does require that a site plan come before the council for final approval. So the applicant must receive final site plan and building plan approval for the R4 high density residential portion of the site. However, it is part of the approved master development plan PUD. So it's a building and site plan review that'll become before the council in the future.
Okay. And when we had that before us initially, the developer did agree with that component on the overall development, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other, yes, Councilmember Block.
Ms. Lindquist, if we did not have the stormwater drain there, what would we be able to do, if anything?
Councilmember Black, I'm not sure.
Would we have to put it someplace else? What would happen?
It could be located somewhere else, or the county, along with the city, because we're part of the partnership for payment for that regional pond, would have to acquire some land somewhere. Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Essler. I think you're muted.
I apologize. So my question is for our city attorney. What is the response, to Mr. Coyle's, assertion about, if the outlot isn't part of the current plan in front of us right now, so what is the city's position in regards to his assertion that because of that's a defense here?
Councilmember Essler. So my understanding of this overall process is that the overall plan has been approved and that there have already been concepts and areas identified for needed ponding, for an infiltration basin, for future development, and that those areas will be needed, and that this is all, included within the overall plan that's already been approved by the city.
So my understanding then that he's asserting that because the specific plat being approved does not include the outlot, even though the concept plan for the entire property, including the outlot, has been approved.
Correct.
Okay. And your position is that the approval that we've granted on the concept plan, which includes the outlot, by statute and by our ordinance, covers the reason why we're able to do what we're planning to do.
Right. In my opinion, with the approval of the master plan, that's correct. And we can certainly debate the legal issues, and perhaps there are other views of it. I'm not denying that, but I think that my interpretation of the statutory authority would be that the city would have authority. So is it 100% without risk? I can't say that, of course, but I think that the statute provides broad authority and that this overall master plan has been approved already.
Okay. Secondly, the county involvement here and their move to withdraw an offer that had been offered to the developer. Mm-hmm. What's and whether this is staff or the city attorney to respond here, what's the county's position on what's their rationale for why they withdrew the offer?
Councilmember Essler, I'm not sure that I can specifically speak for the county's rationale for why they withdrew that offer. So I'm not, I don't know that I want to represent what
Fair
their
enough.
specific rationale was.
Fair enough. What, I guess question for Mr. Coyle then is, what response have you received back from the county on that question?
2 points, sir, council member. First of all, the letter withdrawing the offer made it quite clear that they were going to get the easement, to get their drainage and utility easement for the regional pond via the city's plating process, which they did do. So they felt no need to purchase it at that point.
Okay.
And so I would just remind you that at the time that this all came to fruition, not only was the county prepared to buy it, but the city's stated objective in having the easement demanded of the landowner was that it was per unstated city policy. No reference at all that the ultimate objective was going to be to get the pond for free. And that's where we ended up. And that's the fundamental objection here. There's a lot of money at stakes, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. But the process that was followed here really is wrong. The landowner's been taken advantage of. And I would say the city's hiding behind a process, legitimately or not legitimately. And, the city attorney and I do have a respectful disagreement. But at the end of the day, we're at the same spot. It's pretty clear that the goal here was to obtain control of this property so that the county and the city would avoid having to purchase it.
I guess a question I have, if I may. When the county was contacting you, looking for an easement, were they aware that you were developing, working with the city at the same time on a development agreement?
Rick, do you want to comment?
Yes. Yes, they were. Somewhat along with our design process, city engineer Brian Erickson contacted me to arrange a meeting to meet with the engineer that is helping design the county improvements. And they relayed their need or desire at the time to have a ponding located on the north side of County Road 42 on our property. There were several other alternatives that were presented to me that they said they could look at. Obviously, this was their first choice to go to this direction, just because it's probably the most simple to build. But I relayed that information then to the developer and to the Corto, the sellers, and they responded back to the county that they really would prefer that they look for other alternatives to not have the ponding on that property. We drew the plan that depicted the high density development. It's a ghost apartment building with a parking lot that's trying to depict an adequate balance of parking per units. The more living in spaces and larger the building, the more parking will be needed. That would change the scope of the drainage and the ponding. It was a depiction to try to show what might be there. We don't have even the ponding sketch that's shown has some impact over the top of the gas line easement, which as I've later found out after preparing that document, the gas company preferred not to have any ponding within their easement, which more leads to that the site would have to be further refined and developed to determine ultimately what shape or how much storage or whatever would happen to be with that, the ponding shape and the volumes. But as we went through and we just basically contested and said, there's no development proposed on the south side of the site at this time. Nothing at all. We don't know what it'll look like. There's no need to have a blanket easement on that part of the property. The drainage isn't changing. Nothing is changing. But it was stated oh, it's city policy, this is how we want to have it done. We acquiesced, put the drainage easement on the plat, and now the story's untold. So it's just, we could have found a different way to provide the appropriate easements on the portions of the site that required easements, but we saw no need for easements on the south side of the property.
Yes. Go ahead. Councilmember Essler?
Yeah, so is it, based on the timeline that's been laid out, isn't it likely and maybe reality that at the time the county had offered payment for the easement, they were unaware that the city of Rosemount, we had already approved a concept plan that included the outlot, and that was part of the requirement. So isn't that really the likely scenario on why the county just was unaware? And again, it doesn't sound like anybody's here to represent the county and kind of back up their position, but from the timeline, it sounds like they possibly, or in reality, weren't aware that we had already, secured the easement on the property as part of the concept plan. Is that not the case?
Council member, if I could respond to that, the concept plan did not identify the city or the county wanting a regional pond. The concept plan, as Mr. Osberg indicated, only was a sketch that depicted how a multifamily building could sit on the property with appropriate parking space. That's it. At that point in time, there was no discussion whatsoever that the city or the county was going to be expecting to get a pond via the platting process. We got an offer from the county in June for $55,000. So they had full knowledge of where the project stood at that point. And when I spoke with the county attorney about it, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she was surprised that how this had evolved to become something that the county was going to end up getting by way of the easement, having put out the offer in writing.
Well, I guess a follow-up to that question then is, what was her position on why the county had withdrew the offer? Did she not have an answer for that?
No, they had an answer. The city had not compelled the landowner to provide the blanket easement over Outlot B. So now there was nothing to buy. They already had it for free. When they withdrew the offer, that was the reason.
Councilmember Block.
I have one question for Ms. Lindquist and then one question for Mr. Coyle. Ms. Lindquist, we keep referring to the fact that we have no policy in place in Rosemount for something like this. Do we have a policy, or do we have a tradition history of this type of requirement?
Council member, I would say we often get blanket easements because people, as I mentioned earlier, people don't want to carve out specific easements. So for example, in this site, they've requested that we construct storm sewer all the way to the east boundary. So that'll be outside of the developing area. And often people will give us like a blanket easement so they don't have to worry about where the grading will end, or, if there's equipment that's sitting on something. So often we do. It's not, to my knowledge, my department, I hate to say that, but my department, we don't require a blanket easement. But I also know that we take an opportunity during platting to get any easements that we think are appropriate for development in the area. And that's under state statute, which is kind of a very similar conversation to the one we had about getting the right of way for Autumn Path. The owners at that time said that they would not make use of that road and didn't want to give us the easements for the road. And so we have the easement now. We're not requiring the dedication. So it's a bit different than that situation. And I guess I also just want to be clear that this is a PUD. It's not a concept plan. It's not that nothing was shown. There was an apartment building, and the decisions for approval of the PUD, as well as re-guiding property on the site was in recognition of the commitment, however concept that is, for the apartment on that southern site. Because we originally had commercial on the south, townhomes in the middle, single family on the top, or the most northern. And so there was quite a bit of conversation about land uses and the commitment for the apartments. So I feel that it is not as conceptual and open-ended as maybe is being portrayed.
Thank you.
Councilmember Essler.
So are we all in agreement then that the county withdrew, at the time the county withdrew their offer, they had a copy of the PUD, which included a concept for the outlot area. So at the time they withdrew their offer, did they did the county, that's my question, did the county have that PUD in their hands? They knew what the plan was at the time they withdrew it?
Rick, can you confirm the sequence? My recollection is that the final plat for the first phase was recorded, and thus the county did have actual knowledge because of the way their plat process works. And the withdrawal of the offer came after that fact.
The October 6th is the date we have for the filing. So I don't know what the date is for the letter from the county.
I believe the letter from the county was, had a July date on it, but when I met with the engineers, at that time, we furnished our drawings, James R. Hills, the development drawings to the county design engineers, so that they could understand what the drainage areas were, and so forth. The city's water resources engineering group also asked us to take into account potential changes that might occur along the roadway. So they were fully aware of it. But we didn't have any easements on that property, and we were at the time even, again, contesting that.
Okay, so, and I'm just trying to get my head around the sequence of events here. So are we in agreement on the time frame at which the county withdrew their offer to purchase the easement? Do we know how that compares to when, because I just heard an October 6th filing date, that was approval of Plat 1, Ms. Lindquist?
Yeah, the first edition
Okay,
that had
so
the blanket easement.
that's when we filed, that's when it was recorded? Filed?
That's the stamp on the plat that the
Yeah,
county
okay,
did.
so that was recorded on October, filed and recorded on October 6th. But then I just heard a July date. Is that when the offer was withheld, or when was the offer withheld?
I'm to my knowledge, the city isn't involved in that conversation, so I don't know.
I'm asking the developer.
Yeah.
Rick, can you confirm that date?
I'm trying to find that letter. I'm sorry.
Can I say, how do I get on this thing?
Bill?
You're
Bill,
on.
can you be allowed to speak?
Yeah,
Can you hear him?
Yeah.
Can you hear? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, a couple things. Rick and I met with the appraiser for the county. So the county did know that we were going to develop that property ahead of time. And I believe it was in the fall. It was subsequent. It was in the fall sometime when they withdrew that offer. And I believe they withdrew that offer because they thought they could get it for free.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm just trying to get.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I don't have the date today, but, and again, to clarify something, if we would have known a blanket easement would give the county something for free, we wouldn't have done it. And if we would have been communicated differently that it's a normal course of events to give the blanket easement, when after Rick did some research, that is not the case. When he came back to the city and said, no, there's 7 plats here, that is not always a common occurrence. So I think that it's simply, and I love working with City of Rosemount, but right now they're trying to take property, and I've worked with Dakota County. I've been in Apple Valley for 24 years, and when they needed some land from me, I worked with them, and they paid me. So I didn't really doubt that they would now withdraw after working with them a couple times over the last 24 years. But the county knew I was developing that property. And we would never have given a blanket easement on that outlot if we would have known that it would have given the county free rights not to pay us.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I just want everyone to understand is I'm trying to get an understanding of what the sequence of events was, because Mr. Coyle made a comment that, and I don't remember the exact terminology that you used, but it's manipulation between the county and the city. Obviously, I'm trying to understand what exactly happened and trying to recreate it. But right now, the dates seem a little foggy. And I don't know if we've got a clear understanding and agreement on when exactly the county had submitted an offer for 55,000 and then when they withdrew it. And if I could get certainty around when that was, it would certainly help my head around
right
what actually transpired here.
It was in the summer when we met with the appraiser, and Rick, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure that we had gotten approval by the city council on the first edition, and then subsequently is when they withdrew that offer. I'm
certain you're correct. I don't have, I'm looking for the correspondence.
I'm 95 to 98% sure that is the case, because we were then cognizant when we went in for the second edition, that's when we would tackle this thing, because now we found out that they withdrew their offer. And I'm sorry, council member, that we can get you those exact dates, but I'm almost sure that, because when we went back to the city and when we told the city that, yes, here are some other developments that did not have that blanket easement, that's when the city came back and said, well, that's fine. We won't require a blanket easement, but we still want the ponding easement that the county needs. And so I'm just puzzled that it's simple math. If you take something from somebody, it's not related to this development as far as outlot B, then you should pay for it.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, I'm just trying to understand, what did the county know and when that drove their decision to withdraw an offer that they had given the developer, right?
Right, and we can get you, I'm sorry, we don't have that information, but I guess there'd be no reason for them to withdraw it if they knew they already had it, is my opinion.
Just for clarity, Kim, you mentioned the McMenemy property and the easement we had for that road. At the same time, we upgraded Akron Avenue this year. Did the county get easements on ponding there based on the developers going on through the process at the same time?
Mayor, I'm not as familiar with that. I don't know if Brian's on. I'm not I couldn't, I don't want to say. I could guess, but I don't want to guess. Oh, Brian is on.
Yeah, he's on.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, with the Akron and the Caremore Crossing development, I do know that the county did pay for the right of way there, and that's because that at that time, none of the plats had been approved at that point. They also did pay for some of the ponding, but the only ponding they paid for was that which was necessary for the roadway work.
I guess though I would add, the intention was that we would have gotten the right of way with the platting, similar to what we did on the Meadow Ridge, and wouldn't have had the county forward acquisition. Wouldn't have gone for acquisition. We would have got it through the plat.
Right.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I still have a number of unanswered questions, I guess, that I'm not, the timeline still escapes me, so I wish we had that data. I guess the question is, assuming the county is not gonna reverse its decision and write a check for $55,000 at this point because they have their easement, they have what they need, I guess, what is the developer's ask at this point?
Council member, the county has an easement only by virtue of the city's grant of it. If the city vacates the easement, which is what's pending this evening, and doesn't substitute it with a new drainage and utility easement, which is the staff's condition of approval for phase 2, the county will have to proceed with the offer that they had intended to make back in this past summer. And so the developer's request is that the city approve the request to vacate the existing blanket easement and not accept the staff's request that a substitute easement be placed on Outlot B ahead of any development application that might come in some other day. That's the request. And then we'll negotiate with the county when and if they need an easement on the property, as opposed to getting it someplace else that might be easier.
And I guess the question for city attorney, for Mary, what conversations have you had with the county in regards to that?
Councilmember Essler, I have had limited conversation with the county attorney, but I know that there was some discussion about potentially renewing an offer. I don't know where those discussions ended up. I hadn't heard that they decided to do that. I think the overall consensus is that the use by the county and the city and was consistent with the use of a drainage and utility easement, and that the blanket easement was already there and was approved and was filed with the county, and that the proposed use was not inconsistent with the use of a drainage and utility easement. And so, again, I'm not speaking for the county, but I think that's likely the rationale that went into their thinking as far as retracting the offer. So I haven't spoken with the county attorney recently, so I don't know what conversations they've had on their end.
I mean, on one hand, you're based on my understanding, I mean, the county is taking an opportunity here that has been handed to them, and I'm not sure that's wrong on their part. They already have what they need, so I don't fault them for doing that. What I'm still uncertain about, and I don't have enough comfort myself, is how the whole transaction transpired in a way that the developer didn't get the $55,000 offer. I just still not real clear on the time frame to understand how that happened here. I mean, it feels like somehow the city or the county and it doesn't sound like anybody on the call here, anybody really understands. I think we all understand the position of the county on why they're not willing to pay 55,000 anymore, because they already have what they need. I think we all understand that, but I'm just not clear on how it exactly transpired to the benefit of the county.
Councilmember, the only thing I would add is these are not, these are joint projects, so there's benefit to the city too. Because we contribute to these projects, and this is the Akron Avenue project where some of this ponding is. And so we have typically looked at forward in when infrastructure projects are coming in to see what kinds of things we need when we're a partner in the project.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, I mean, Peter, I guess I'll ask for your advice, but, you know, we can get you that dates, Councilman. And if you want to table that, if Peter thinks that's the best idea, we can get you those dates. And as I've told the city and sent a letter to the city, I'm happy to participate in helping with the city in contributing part of what the county would pay to me to their park fund or something else. But at some point, when you take something from someone that does affect the project, I do think it's fair to, you know, not to retract that. And I think if you want to table that, if Peter thinks that's the best idea, we can table that and get you those dates on when the offer came in, when it was withdrawn, and so forth, if you're more comfortable with that. Sir.
At this point, I would request that we table it and not take action tonight. I think, to me, at least for me, there's still too many unknowns, and I don't have a clear understanding of exactly what happened here.
I agree with Councilmember Essler.
Thank you.
That would be acceptable.
Yes, one question I have. So as the city, and Kim, you indicated, we always look forward, if we know of other things occurring in this area, we'll secure ponding for it. So my question from a city standpoint, we knew this stoplight intersection was going to occur a couple years ago. Did we, as city staff, the first time we met with the landowner developer here, explain that the projects that were going on here, stormwater would be needed for beyond this project?
Mayor, I think the thing is, we knew the Akron Avenue signal light was going in, but we didn't know where ponding would be or how much. So I think, I mean, my guess, and Brian, you can correct me, is the opportunity to have a pond next to an existing pond is a really reasonable thing that we look at doing, you know, just expanding a proposed pond. And so, you know, they show a pond in this location, it's more pond, and so that made sense, but it wasn't something we would have known. You know, the first approval occurred in February of 2020, but they'd been working on the layout for quite some time. We had some other issues, utility issues. So no, we wouldn't have told them immediately.
But we would have known, most likely it was going off to the northeast quadrant instead of the northwest because of development in this side of the road, not the west side. Is that correct, Brian?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I can, you know, when the Akron Avenue Signal Project started, and I'll be honest, it was maybe a year ago it started. So this was a very much fast tracked from the county's perspective. You know, generally their projects usually look at about a 3-year time frame. At that point in time, the only thing that they really had as far as a scope was the installation of a traffic signal. They had no scope as far as how far north or south on Akron, as well as east or west on Highway 42. So as they started going into the preliminary design phase of the project, that's when they really, they started looking at that corridor. So, that would have been in the spring of 2020, early spring. So, at that point, that's when they would have started looking where are the best spots for the ponding. And I'd have to go back and look for sure, but I don't think, a lot of their survey was actually done probably mid-spring last, in 2020. So as far as, where ponding was going to go at that time, they really didn't have a clear picture on that, so.
And since our city attorney's on here, and I saw 3 council members indicate they'd like more information tabling. This is a public hearing. Do we have a 60-day rule on this?
Yes, well, we can table it. You should pick a date certain to table, to, if that's your intention to do that. But it should be done within the 60-day period.
Okay, and then my question, the next council meeting is February 2nd. Is that within that 60-day requirement if we tabled it? I'll open the public hearing, and anyone online can speak, but we could continue it until February 2nd. And my question is that within our 60 days?
And Mr. Mayor, we can also get agreement from the developer to extend that time frame.
Okay.
February 2nd is fine. with-
And then my other question, by doing that and tabling this, that would affect our new business request on a final plat,
Right.
which was conditioned on this. Would that be problematic to delay that for 2 weeks?
Mayor, I may let Kim address that. I don't know the specific dates or timing of that.
Mayor, both of the applications were received at the same time. I guess it makes more sense to just have the applicant agree to the continuance. I looked up the vacation, it was in November 17th. So we've taken an extension already for the plan amendment. So I guess my preference would be to just have them accept both of the continuances.
Mr. Mayor, you've got the developer, the applicant's consent to extend it February 2nd. No problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so with that, if there are no further comments at this time, this Councilmember Essler.
Sorry, just to understand what, between now and 2 weeks from now, is it helpful to have a dialogue on what exactly should we have accomplished within the 2 weeks and have a better understanding so that when we come back in 2 weeks, what information are we really asking for? Because it seems to me like one of the opportunities we have is to engage the county. I think the county needs to get involved in the conversations here. Does that make sense? Is that out of line? Is that inappropriate? I guess question for Mary on this.
Councilmember Essler, I think it would be helpful, at least for me and probably for staff, to know exactly, the specific questions that you want answered. What I heard earlier was that you want to know the specific time frame of the county's offer, and then when it was retracted. I heard that was information that you wanted to have.
Yeah, that would help me get my head around, they made an offer at some point. Why did they, I think we all understand why they retracted their offer. But I just think there's got to be some engagement at the county level on, based on what and the timing that they determined to do that. And what did they know and when?
Councilmember Block.
I would also like to get from Mr. Ryan, the developer, he had mentioned that, if we choose not to go through on this path and the county pays them, he had mentioned that he might be open to contributing some of that to the city for our parks budget or whatever that might be. If that truly is the case, I would like some of that information on what he might be considering.
I'd be happy to provide that for you.
Thank you.
And what I'd like to add into here, I'd like to know if the county engineer had knowledge of our development contiguous or close by to this project when they issued the letter and made the offer to the property owner. Because I think part of this issue, we're trying to solve an issue that was created by the county, and we have no one here representing the county. And yet, we want to ensure, hey, this is open and above board. We are doing everything in normal process. So they created the problem. I would like that pursued and get as much information as you can and dates.
Yep. Well said.
So with that, hopefully that's clear. This is a public hearing. It is now 8:16, and I'll open the podium that anyone that would like to address the council and make a statement at this time may do so. So the public hearing is now open. And Aaron, you can tell if anyone wishes to make a comment, they can raise their hand or put it in chat.
Correct.
We'll wait a minute or two, and then I guess as indicated from councils here, we will continue the public hearing to our next council meeting on February 2nd would be an appropriate motion. Do you see any one interested? So if we have no comments here, would anyone like to make a motion regarding the public hearing? Councilmember
Motion to
Block?
close the public hearing. Is that what you're asking?
Go ahead, Councilmember Essler,
To continue it.
to continue it to February 2nd.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing until February 2nd.
And I'll second.
We have a motion on the floor. Councilmember Essler, a second. Councilmember Block, please take the roll.
Essler,
Aye.
Fresky, Weisensel,
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0, and this public hearing will be continued to our next council meeting on February 2nd. So at that time, we'll reconvene with additional information, take action at that time. So, gentlemen, I appreciate your participation this evening, and that will conclude this item at this time. So with that, and I'm looking to our legal
Mayor?
counsel.
Mayor,
Yes.
Mayor, question. Do we have to take specific action on 7A and 9 to table that action? Is that required, or is it simply tied to the public hearing?
I think on 9, we'll just table the item to next meeting.
But I'm also asking the motion for 7A, while it happens after the public hearing, do we have to have a specific action to table it?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Weisensel, I think with the motion to table the public hearing or continue the public hearing, that implied in that is you're basically postponing action on the resolution as well.
Okay, thank you.
So the action next meeting will be open or continue the public hearing and followed by action. And tonight on 9, we'll just table this item until next meeting. Do we have to take a vote on number 9 since it's part of our agenda? Motion?
Yes,
be
when you
wise.
get to that agenda item, you'll need to take action to table that as well.
So with that, I'm clear. If no one else has any questions, comments, we'll conclude our public hearing for this evening, and we'll move on to item 8, which is the report on the annual evaluation of our city administrator. So last meeting, we adjourned to a closed session to do a review for Logan Martin, our city administrator, on his annual review. And during that process, we provide feedback to Logan on organizational management, fiscal business management, his relationship with the council and with the public and public relations, long-range planning, intergovernmental relations, and professional and personal development. So in those 7 categories, I'll report Logan met standard expectations or exceeded. I'll say especially with last year during the COVID and the current arrangements we have, city administrators went through a very difficult year. In fact, much of his activity during the year changed week by week based on state orders and various situations within the city of Rosemont. But I will say from the council on the whole, he received very high marks on how we moved through, especially the COVID process and his management of our team. I'd also say there, the very first days that it came out, and as stressful as it was when you had to close down everything, Logan and staff, the leadership was very clear, especially with the construction industry and those outside jobs. We would figure out a way how to come up with processes, and initially we had boxes in the lobby where they didn't come in the building. They just dropped plans there that we could handle those remotely, and we've gone through just all kinds of iterations throughout the year. From that perspective and overall, I'll just say wonderful job. If any council member wants to add in, you may do so at this time, or I'll just turn it over to Logan if you'd like to make some comments in each category.
Thanks, Mayor, members of the council. Very kind comments. Appreciate that very much, Mayor. That means a lot. Yeah, I would just echo, we had a really nice conversation on January 5th on 2020 in those 7 categories that were previously mentioned. We discussed areas of strength and growth and also opportunities for continued improvement. And I know I took away a lot from it, and it's always a nice kind of marker point in the year to know how things are going and as we continue to move forward. So a lot of work yet to be done, and we continue to keep growing, but I continue to very much appreciate my role here in relationship with the City Council. The start of my 5th year, which is hard to believe, but it's been just a great experience for me, and appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. Any other comments from council members? And yes, Councilmember Essler.
Yeah, I would definitely second everything that was laid out in the review. Logan's a joy to work with. Really enjoy the relationship that he has with the council. Does a great job. I think as noted on the staff write up here, the long range planning is the area where I know we can make some progress, even though it's exceeding expectations or slightly above meeting expectations. I know that is going to become really important and critical to the city of Rosemont going forward, is that we really need to, continue to get traction on some of our long-range planning and making some decisions that are, more long-term in nature. But again, I enjoy the heck working with Logan, and really enjoy the work and the attitude he puts into his job.
Thank you. Councilmember Block?
I echo everything Councilmember Essler said, but I would also like to say, part of the reason I like working with Mr. Martin is he's always open to what we have to say. And Councilmember Essler and I are the newest, and came in with tons of ideas and tons of energy, and he's been open to those and has actually executed on some of those, such as hiring Eric, one of our business development staff people. And so I really appreciate that about him. And just like Councilmember Essler said, I love working with him, and he is very responsive. So thank you for everything you did in a hard year. And we look forward to this year and next year being not so hard for you.
Fingers crossed.
That's right. Can't get much worse.
Anyone else? Councilmember Weisensell and then Councilmember Fresky.
I would just offer that it feels good that each year we see this growth in Logan's abilities in handling our city and staff, and just knowing that 5 years ago we made a good decision. We actually made a great decision, and we're seeing that each year, elevating the city and staff.
Councilmember Fresky?
Yeah, I will echo what everyone has said, but I just want to say thank you for your leadership. 2020 was crazy, crazy challenging, and you and your staff really rose to the occasion. So I'm hoping that we have a smoother 2021, fingers crossed, and we have a lot of really exciting things happening. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. So Logan, nothing but good
Yeah,
comments.
appreciate that. That's very
We're
kind.
excited to move forward, and hopefully we'll have a more open environment sometime this
That's
year.
right. Thank you.
So that'll conclude item 8, and we'll move on to item 9, which is a request by CNC Development for final plat of approval. And as we discussed earlier, we need a motion to continue this item to February 2nd. Anyone wish to move a motion?
I'll make a motion to table this until February 2nd.
I'll second.
We have a motion, Councilmember Essler, second, Councilmember Block. Any other comments, discussion? If not, please take the roll.
Fresky,
Aye.
Weisensell,
Aye.
Block,
Aye.
Drosty,
Aye.
Essler,
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, and this item will be continued to February 2nd, 2021. And that concludes all items under new business, item 9. So we'll move on to announcements. I'll first turn it over to our city administrator, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, members of the council. A couple updates tonight, just for residents to be aware of. Staff and council are currently engaged in their annual goal setting process and strategic planning process, casting a vision for the next 5 years. So looking out at 2027 and what Rosemount will look like in 2027. First meeting happened for about 4 hours last week. Another meeting this week with facilitator, and there's just some great work to be done there. And then we'll release, of course, that document to the public and a communication plan as well on the vision and strategic plans and action steps being cast by the city council in partnership with staff going forward. But there, like council just mentioned, there's really exciting times in the community, and the work to kind of put a box around that right now and dream big is ongoing, and so residents will be excited to hear more to come from that. Similarly, the Port Authority met with the City Council and Planning Commission tonight to cast a vision for a bunch of retail corridors in the community as well, and casting a vision for 4 or 5 retail nodes that we expect to be the next areas of growth in the community. It'll turn into a visual explanation, a visual tool to show that council has heard from residents, that they're heard from the marketplace, heard from developers, reacting, and then working actively to pursue that type of use in the community. So there's a lot of really exciting kind of vision stuff, long-term plan stuff happening right now that I thought it'd be prudent to just mention to residents. And then lastly, if folks did not have a chance to tune in, the first Voices of Rosemount event was held yesterday in partnership with the One Rosemount Group, which is a group that the mayor helped found about 15 years ago of community leaders in faith, religion, government, education, business, nonprofit, etc. Held a kind of an MLK Day listening session yesterday. If you didn't get a chance to view it, it was a really great panel of voices locally of influence. This time it was from the Black and Brown community. A wonderful panel, and we'll be producing that video into kind of a lockdown process. It was live on Facebook and YouTube. It'll be a lockdown recorded thing that folks can find on all of our social media platforms, and most namely, I think it'll be YouTube link. It's about an hour and a half long or so, but encourage folks to tune into that if they're curious about some perspective from other members of our community. But with that, I can turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Upcoming on the city calendar, on Monday, January 25th, the Utility Commission meets at 5:30 p.m. And by the way, all these meetings are virtual. Also on Monday, the Parks and Recreation Commission meets at 7 p.m. On Tuesday, January 26th, the Planning Commission meets their regular meeting, 6:30 p.m. On Wednesday, January 27th, the Youth Commission meets at 3:45, and the next City Council work session and regular meeting will be on Tuesday, February 2nd, with the work session beginning at 5 p.m. and City Council at 7 p.m. And with that, if there are no further announcements, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Night.